Content warning: this episode of the Batt Signal discusses suicide and allegations of spiritual and sexual abuse. An investigation by the battalion revealed former members of the Christland Church have described manipulation, sexual abuse, and entrapment, a system they say is upheld by its lead pastor, Shandor Paul. Over the next 4 years, the new Aggie Scholarship Initiative has a goal of raising $100 million for students, and a new $6 million grant received by Texas A&M will fund a cancer research center to investigate causes and cures of cancer. I'm Caroline Wilburn, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Batt Signal. Shandor Paul came to College Station in 2017 to found the Christland Church with a group of colleagues, a quote, church plant team. The group focused its recruitment efforts on Texas A&M students and began inviting them to Christland. However, A&M students and former members recounted that while initially welcoming, the church soon engulfed them, with many still recovering today from alleged instances of sexual and spiritual abuse, manipulation, and mistreatment. Christland is, quote, a multi-ethnic, multi-generational church with a heart for students, unquote, located 5 minutes away from A&M. It has a 4.8 out of 5 stars on Google Reviews, a welcoming website, and, when searched online, a majority of the results are generally positive. But a closer examination of sources from the church, including court documents and leaked records, reveals a different story. Paul, vice president of a network of nationwide churches and lead pastor at Christland, has allegedly stood by while this abuse and mistreatment has run rampant, even personally perpetrating them in some instances, according to insider sources. Yet, he has faced no consequences. Conversely, sources say he's thrived, right here in College Station. Here to tell us more about his in-depth investigative story regarding Christland Church is news writer Nico Gutteridge. Nico, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, thanks for having me.
So, before we get into exactly what you discovered about the Christland Church, could you tell us what the Christland Church is and what the network is?
Of course, yeah. So to get started, the network is kind of an overarching organization that kind of looks over 26 churches, 24 of which are in the United States, and one is in the UK, one is in Thailand. So these churches kind of spread out from state to state, targeting college towns, and Christland Church is the branch that came to College Station to target A&M in 2017.
And can you tell us exactly who Shandor Paul is?
Yeah, of course. So Shandor Paul is the lead pastor at Christland Church here in College Station. And so he originally was on the original church plant team that came from Carpenter, Illinois, from a church called Vine Church. Vine Church was the very first church in the network as a whole, and it was started by Steve Morgan. So I think it was 1987 where Steve Morgan was indicted in Kansas for sexual sodomy against a minor who turned out to be a 15-year-old boy. So a few years later, that's when he discovered Christianity, and he met Shandor Paul at Southern Illinois University in Illinois. So Shandor Paul would be the first pastor Morgan would recruit in the network as a whole, and he would mentor him and train him and kind of build him up to be the lead pastor at Vine Church before he came to Christland Church in 2017.
So can you tell us exactly what led up to the allegations brought on by Stephen Morgan to Shandor Paul?
Yeah, of course. So the whole sexual sodomy of a minor indictment happened in 1987, but the charges were actually dropped 3 years later because the prosecution made a diversion agreement. So where Steve Morgan had to fulfill a bunch of requirements and the charges would be dropped. So some of those requirements were he had no contact with youth organizations for 3 years, he had to pay for therapy for the victim, he wasn't allowed to speak to the victim, and a lot of different things like that. So those were kept completely hidden from the public and the entire church network and Vine Church and Christland Church for decades, actually, and until they kind of got revealed in 2022 as the court documents were not leaked. They were revealed because the public information, it just no one ever knew where to search for them or that they even existed in the first place. Once they got revealed in 2022, then all the network churches individually responded to them, and Shandor Paul and Christland Church were one of the churches. So they had what they called a family meeting around summer 2022 where they kind of talked about the allegations to Christland Church, the whole congregation that was there, and what they really focused on was that they weren't really going to take any action regarding the issue. Shandor Paul specifically said that he had known about the sexual sodomy for decades at that point, and that they had already looked at it. 4 boards on the network's board of overseers were debating whether to take action. Shondor Paul was on 2 of those 4 boards, and collectively they decided that there was nothing really wrong. Shondor Paul's main reason was that the sexual sodomy of the minor occurred, quote, before he was a Christian, quote. So, and some of the other quotes Shondor used was that biblically it's forgotten by God. Just the entire time, it was a lot of just belittling the actions. One, because it happened so long ago, according to him, and 2, because there was no actual conviction, and 3, because it occurred before he was a Christian. So there's a lot more to that story, but that's kind of the overarching reaction that Shondor Paul had when the indictment documents came out. And Shondor Paul is a big person in the network too. If he wanted to take action against Steve Morgan to kind of not have him qualified to lead the network of 26 churches in the United States, he could honestly do that because he is vice president of the network, right below Steve Morgan. He's vice president of the board of overseers that could take action according to the network's bylaws, which are publicly available in the story. And so that was kind of the overarching reaction to everything, and there's a lot more to it too, but that's the main details.
I understand that you talked to a lot of sources from the actual church that were victims, whether of Shondor Paul or just of the network as a whole. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
So when you spoke to them, what were their stories that they told you?
Yeah, so what I heard kind of overarchingly was that a lot of the members' concerns were kind of not taken seriously when brought up to leaders. I talked to 3 main people from Christland Church who each told me individual instances of spiritual abuse and manipulation. And a few of them also told me instances of sexual abuse within the church that were not taken seriously when brought up to leaders. So there was one instance in the church of a source I talked to. Her name was Emelia, and she was in the church for a few years. And she just graduated in 2022. She's an alumni now. And his story was that she had a boyfriend in the Corps Cadets who sexually abused her sophomore year of college. So this boyfriend was also in Christland Church and, going to it and participating in the kids program. He was very close to Shondor Paul himself. And so when Emelia actually brought it up to Shondor, he really didn't do anything. Emelia said that she left the meeting feeling good, that everything looked to be okay. And then nothing ever happened after she told Shondor that this church member had sexually abused her. After that, the church member just continued staying in the church, for months after that, continued serving in the church's kids program, kind of just continued interacting with a lot of different people. And that's kind of the overarching theme I heard whenever talking to sources throughout my interviews, was that whenever these issues were brought up, no action was ever taken. It's gonna suck.
It's okay. I can do it. When you stumbled upon this story, why did you think that it was an important story for us to tell as a student newspaper at A&M?
I feel it's important because Christland Church does have an impact on campus. They are inviting students in. They do have a student organization that they use to advertise on campus. They have participated in the MSc Open House a few times where they're advertising there, they're bringing students in. One of the founding members I interviewed talked to me about how at the beginning of every semester, they have church members who are students go around campus handing out flyers on Christland, connected to Airheads, the classic student advertising thing. And so they act like a student organization and they bring these students to Christland Church. Through that, they kind of introduce them to a lot of the issues presented in the article. So I feel like it's important to make it aware to students that, hey, this thing is active on campus. Beware, because you never know if they might reach out to you one day.
And what do you hope people take away when they read your story?
When reading my story, I think an overarching theme was that a lot of the concerns just weren't taken seriously. So I hope that people can honestly look around them and see, hey, is there anything going wrong? Is there anything I need to address? Is there anything that's making people feel uncomfortable, making people feel not safe? What can I do to fix that, to solve that? Because in Christland Church, I heard from pretty much everybody I talked to that by the end, they didn't feel safe in the church. If one thing people can take away from my story was that you have the power to make change, then I hope they take that.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Nico, and for all the effort that you put into this story. You can read Nico's full investigation of the Christland Church on our website, thebat.com, or in our recent print edition on stands now. Thank you so much for your time, Nico.
Thank you so much for having me.
Texas A&M recently announced a new joint initiative, the Aggie Scholarship Initiative, with a commitment to raise $100 million for students over the next 4 years. Here to tell us more is news writer Sneha Bhale. Sneha, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about what this scholarship initiative entails?
The initiative was first mentioned at the 2022 State of University address in the fall by President M. Catherine Banks. Banks said that the university will embark on a scholarship campaign with the goal of raising additional money to assist students with the cost of education. Texas A&M Foundation, along with the university, have since worked on collaborating with other scholarship organizations and donors to make the goal feasible.
And how will this initiative interact with donors?
The scholarship initiative operates where donors can decide if the scholarship they fund is need-based or merit-based and what it goes towards. It can go towards the region scholarships for first-generation students, foundation excellence awards for underrepresented students, major specific scholarships, Corps of Cadet scholarships, or whatever else the donor may be passionate about. This initiative may also increase opportunities for students wanting to study abroad during the summer and during the school year as well.
And what are students saying about this initiative?
General engineering freshman Tanvi Kangara said many students feel the scholarship initiative is a step in the right direction and shows the university is prioritizing mitigating high costs. Kangara said, quote, "This initiative definitely shows a dedication to help students have access to higher education. Most students would like to go into higher education like a master's program, but don't always have the means for it, so this will be helpful." End quote. Some students are already planning on looking for new scholarship opportunities for next fall and have more options. Biomedical sciences freshman Nathra Karthik said this initiative should be carried over to other universities. Karthik said, quote, "When applying for colleges and for scholarships, I noticed that the scholarships don't consider all the circumstances of the students. Students are not able to have more options because of this initiative rather than to feel underrepresented and can go on to higher education opportunities, which is something other universities should look at doing." End quote.
So, how can students apply for this scholarship?
Students can apply for these scholarships on the Texas A&M Scholarship and Financial Aid page. Most scholarship programs also connect the donors or recipients through mentorship programs, hear academic updates from the students, and attending annual events together.
Well, you can read more about the scholarship initiative on thebat.com. Sneha, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Texas A&M received a $6 million grant to support a new Texas Regional Excellence in Cancer, or TREC Center. Here to tell us more is news writer Emelia Gamez. Emelia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about what this grant is going to focus on?
Yeah, so TREC will focus on research regarding genetic and environmental factors in the development of cancer. Co-director of the Cancer Prevention Clinicogenomics Registry Corps, Rick Silva, said. There are 2 core experiments of the center along with a mentorship program, TREC director Dr. Kenneth Ramos said. The grant is a 5-year grant according to Texas A&M Today. The grants are renewable, so if the program does well, there's a high chance of receiving another grant, said Ramos. There are additional means to fund the program, such as funding agencies and philanthropy that A&M can receive, Ramos said.
And what will the center's research focus on?
The center's research will be focused around a theme of molecular and population level understanding of genetic, social, and environmental factors, Silva said. Based on the expertise at A&M, it was an appropriate focus, Silva said. Ramos said the center will have 2 core experiments. One experiment will focus on single-cell omics technology to understand the biological complexity, prevention, and treatment of different cell types. Ramos said the center has created 2 facility cores that hopefully in 5 years' time will put the center on the map in terms of its ability to carry out those experiments. The other focus will be a cancer prevention clinicogenomics registry core with Silva as the co-director, according to Texas A&M Today. Clinicogenomics looks at data sets patients provide so researchers can look at both their genetic and environmental information, Silva said. Silva said the center looks at social, socioeconomic, occupational, and environmental factors that might contribute to the progression of the high-risk patients to develop cancer.
And besides research, what else will the center focus on?
The center will have a mentorship program to identify early career investigators who have never received independent funding from a major agency, Ramos said. A mentoring plan will be developed so senior investigators can advise the new investigators. Ramos described it as similar to private consultants for a project. The program will also allow early career investigators to receive access to facility cores and expand their network by connecting with others, Ramos said. Ramos said the average age for a first-time award recipient by investigators is about 40 years old. What the center is trying to do with a program like this is shift the curve to the left. With a mentorship program, the center can expedite the time individuals take to secure their first grant.
Well, you can read more about the Cancer Research Center in Emelia's article available now on thebat.com or in our most recent print edition on stands now. Emelia, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
For more information on all the stories featured in today's episode, visit our website at thebat.com or pick up a print edition on stands every Thursday. This week's contributors are Nico Gutteridge, Sneha Bhale. This week's contributors are Nico Gutteridge, Sneha Bhale, and Emelia Gamez. This week's contributors are Nico Gutteridge, Sneha Bhale, and Emelia Gamez. This week's contributors are Nico Gutteridge, Sneha Bhale, and Emelia Gamez. Make sure to check out previous episodes of the Batt Signal, Home Turf, and Calculated Culture, available wherever you get your podcasts. Boom. Boom.